All right, Spiro, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is my podcast. I was going to call it Another Asshole with a Podcast, but instead I called it I'll Call My Guy. And of course, the reason is I got a guy was trademarked, but I'll Call My Guy wasn't.
Oh, okay.
And it's the same concept, right? I need a cool place to go get breakfast or to cater a party, whatever. And it's like, I'll call my guy. I'll call Spiro. Like,
oh, nice.
It's about connections and relationships and all that stuff. And so when Sammy and I meet every week and we talk about, potential guests, and I know I've been coming to your restaurant or I wouldn't even call it a restaurant. I've been coming to I call it an experience.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's different because it's not a cafe. It's not a bistro. It's an experience because you have so much ambiance, but you also have great food and also very friendly people, and you and your wife run it. So I've been going to your experience for many years, and I said we got to have this guy in because you had this, a little tiny thing, and now you've turned it into like a place where you have to wait a while to get in.
Yeah.
So
it's something that's like even we're like scratching our heads sometimes because. I wish that I could say that like we had this business plan and it's all falling into place, and it's not. When we started, how it all started is that I worked at the Half Door for 10 years.
So so let's back you up a second.
Back up. Let's go back
up a second. So you're Spiro, you're Greek.
Yes.
Were you born here?
East Hartford.
Yeah. Okay, but your parents were born in Greece.
My mother's from Rhodes.
Rhodes, right? And I told you I've been there. I've vacationed
Beautiful.
in Rhodes. I love it.
Yeah, and my father's from Corfu.
Corfu.
Yeah,
okay.
the two most beautiful islands,
right.
I think, in Greece.
Right.
And they left all that beauty and came to East Hartford.
I know. It's so funny. The joke I heard the other day is, your parents leave the little, beautiful island in Greece to come to East Hartford. And now all of us want to go to the little island in Greece.
Right.
And you're like, what the hell did you leave that for this?
No kidding. Well, when you're there and you're like, everything is just
perfect.
So perfect. And you're like, this is
simple.
the life I want to live and like the perspective I want to have every day. But then my father's like, okay. He's like, there's nowhere to work for you to raise a family. We went to school up until 4th grade. Like my mother went to 4th grade. My dad went to 7th grade.
Correct. Right. That's the difference, right?
That's the difference.
If you go there now,
it's different now.
Middle class people, we can go there on vacation. You're like, oh my God, I could be here every day, but you couldn't support your lifestyle.
Right. But that being said, all the generations before them, like my father is 1 out of 8. He's the only one that came to the United States. Everyone else is still there.
Right.
And they're
finding a way.
And they're living the life that his parents lived,
Right. So both parents, did they get married in Greece?
They got married. It's actually a crazy story. So my father was in the Navy, and because everyone has to serve.
It's like Israel, like not women though, right?
No, not women. So when you're like I don't know, like 16, 17 years old, you become enlisted. You go in. So my father was in the Navy for a couple of years, and then he came to the United States. And my mother was in Rhodes, but they were like pen pals.
Oh.
Through a mutual friend, they wrote letters to each other for 2 years.
Wow.
They met. First time they met, 2 weeks later they got married.
And how long they been together?
Well, my mother passed away about 2 years ago. And they were together for 55 years.
55 years.
Yeah. It's amazing. And they were like one person. They were like, it was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at some point they decide we want to make a new life in East Hartford.
Yeah. Well, they came, and it is. It's like they didn't choose Connecticut. They didn't know anything about the snow and all. I mean, they were just kind of like that's where people that we know are.
There's a lot of people from Rhodes here.
Yeah, like the whole Greek church. Like a lot of them are from the same village.
Right.
So they just go where they know people. Just like every other thing.
Or you want to feel a connection, right?
Yeah.
So they come here what year?
It was probably late, like maybe 69.
Okay.
70. And so they came here. My
Any kids in tow when they come here?
No, my brother was born. We were all born in Hartford.
Okay.
So we lived in Hartford for like the first 2 years,
okay.
and then when I was born, they went straight to East Hartford.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's where we grew up. It was the greatest place in the world to grow up. It was great.
Right.
East Hartard was
right.
It was like
different place.
It was awesome.
Yes. So you had do you speak Greek at home with your parents?
When we were growing up, my parents only spoke Greek. They didn't know English, and so as we learned English, they learned English.
Right, because you're talking to your friends and you're translating for them at the stores.
Yeah, a lot of like half Greek, half English yelling going on. And everyone's like, why is everyone yelling at each other? I'm like, everyone's just talking to each other. There's no one yelling. It's just like
Greek.
Yeah. So that was.
So you just have a brother.
I have a brother and a sister.
Brother and a sister.
Yeah,
Okay.
brothers in Pittsburgh, sisters in California.
Okay.
She's an ornithologist in California.
It's a bird person?
Yeah. My brother is engineer.
And where is he?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep. And I was, so growing up in East Hartford, East Hartford High, I graduated like in 92, but then I was very, very like focused on the arts.
You're an artist.
Yeah. And I went to school for it. I was a printmaking and painting major.
Oh.
And
I
then
didn't know this about you.
through that, I will skip because
Well, hold on. Back 1 second. What did your dad do for a living? How did he make a living here? So let's paint the picture.
Yeah.
You have parents that haven't assimilated really.
Right.
They don't speak any English, very little broken English, and they've got to earn a living. They probably have 5,000 euros in their pocket or lira. I guess it was at the time Greek lira.
Yeah,
so before the euro. Drachmas.
Yeah,
That's right. Drachmas.
Yeah.
Right. Drachmas in their pocket.
Yep.
They've got some support here. They get a rent. Somebody gives them an apartment that they own.
They're living with relatives.
Relatives, right? Yeah. So how do they pay for Spiro's winter coat?
So my mother, there's this place called Ironworks Gym in East Hartford, and she worked upstairs as a seamstress. It was very much a sweatshop, and so that's where she worked. And then she worked part time at a bakery, and so she did whatever. Yeah, and then. My father. Then she would eventually go to cosmetology school, and she learned. And then her career was hairdressing and being a hairdresser.
And she probably did well with that.
She did well. She did for like 40 years.
It's all cash.
Yeah, and she worked for other people, but she did. For
but that's good, right? Because they come to the house, you go to their house.
Oh, the house would always smell like perm.
Oh, I love that smell. By the way, I love that smell.
And there'd always be somebody getting their hair done in the kitchen.
Right, and they're talking in Greek.
All my friends.
Yeah.
Every single one of my friends, my mother's cut their hair since they were kids.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's a good business. That's before Venmo and everything because they just can't get cash.
Just cash, yeah. And half the time she wouldn't even accept any money. So, but my father, you know where the Laurel is?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the Quarter Pug there.
Across the street, those smokestacks back there. That's Abbott Ball Company.
Okay.
My father worked there for like 45 years, 48 years.
Factory worker.
Making ball bearings.
Wow.
Yeah, so he did that, and he would leave there, and then he would go work. He'd work 7 to 7. 6 days a week. Well, 7 to 7, 5 days a week.
At the ball bearing.
Yeah, and then he would put an 8-hour shift in on Saturday. And then after he'd get out of work at 7 o'clock, he'd go to walk down to Empire Pizza, which is down the road.
Oh, I love that building.
Yeah, they used to have the best pizza.
Is it good pizza?
I don't know about it anymore.
I wonder if they
when we were kids.
I always wanted to get a pizza there, but I'm from New Haven, so I'm really picky.
It's Greek pizza. It's Greek pizza.
My wife loves Greek pizza.
I grew up on it.
Greek pizza is like, I don't know if the right metaphor, but like once in a while my wife will have it and she knows I'm like a pizza snob because I grew up in New Haven. But I always find myself taking like the centerpiece and I'm like, but it has to be cold.
It's doughy.
It's too doughy to me.
It's doughy. It's good. But it's also it's like it's very nostalgic.
Yeah.
Because every neighborhood has a Greek restaurant, has a Greek pizza place.
Yeah. She gets orders from Jimmy's.
Okay.
Jimmy. Yeah. Everyone's named Jimmy. Jimmy Vastakis or something, right?
That sounds about right.
Right. But it's really good because if it's a little colder, the sauce kind of congeals.
Yeah. It's like sweet sauce.
Sweet's
doughy
very
bread,
sweet. The sugar in it.
Yeah.
So he would wait. So 7 to 7 every day. And then
7 to 7 Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 on a Saturday.
Right, just pick up some extra hours.
And then he would go work at the pizza place until they closed. And he'd work there till like...
So when did you see him?
We would see
Sundays.
Sundays were a big deal. Memories of like everyone in my parents' bedroom with the Sunday paper. Like we're all on the floor reading like the funnies.
They hand you this stuff,
and they would have like my mother would be reading like all the like the store things. You remember the?
I know. I love it because you'd go and see what's on sale.
Yeah, that was
Caldor, Bradley's.
And then we'd go to church on Sundays and stuff like that. But like Sundays, like everyone was home, or we'd go over to a relative's house. But we would go to Greece as kids, like every other year. My father would stay home and work.
Oh, so he'd send the family to Greece.
Yeah, so we'd go from like the day after school got out to the day before school got in.
Oh, wow.
Because we would only be able to afford to go like every 2 years.
Right, but you'd stay with a relative.
We'd stay with my grandparents.
Your grandparents, right. So you just need the plane tickets.
That's it.
If
my father ever went out, it was like a big deal. I was like, holy shit.
You mean to go to dinner?
No, to go to Greece.
Right.
If you ever made out to Greece, he went like, I can remember maybe like twice in my life that we were there all together.
Wow.
So he worked a lot.
So your summer camp was Greece?
Yeah, every couple of years. If that, just like riding our bikes around the neighborhood.
Right. Just old fashioned, playing with a stick.
Whatever it was, going down the park, getting into trouble. Like like a lot of like hanging out in front of people's houses.
Yeah, we did.
But like there was like a neighborhood of like, there's like 12 of us that were the same age. My brother was when in high school, my brother was a senior, I was a freshman, so it was everything in between.
Right. So you'd see, right. But as you know, like now, one of my best friends from high school, I hang out with his brother, but his brother was 7 years younger than us.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 49, his brother's 42. It's no
like the same
different.
thing, no.
But then, you're 16 and he's 9.
Yeah. I was so, but like we spent a lot of time doing that. And it was like the street that we lived on, like everyone knew each other. Everyone knew, your parents. You couldn't get away with anything because like people were looking out the window.
A lot of Greeks on the street?
None. It was all Irish Catholic on the street.
Interesting.
And we were bookend. There was a Greek family here.
Right.
And then there was a Puerto Rican family, the Perez's down at the end of the street.
Oh, interesting.
And those were the only ethnic families on the street.
Wow.
And I didn't realize this at the time when you're a kid. You think that like everyone loves each other.
Right.
But I found out when I was older that there was a lot of like kind of like
Yeah.
bigotry and a lot of like of people didn't like these people. And I was like, really?
Yeah, because kids don't know it. You don't born that way. You're just like, this is a nice kid.
I was like, I wish you never told me that. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
right, because it's pure, right? Because, my kids don't understand that. When my kids started, Rex started seeing plays and like understanding racial, he's like, what is this about? I'm like, well, it's taught. It's not, you're not born with that module.
No.
Yeah, we don't care. We just like, is he a nice guy or not?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wow. So, all right. So, I mean, talk about hardworking people. I mean, that's like, your dad, and he did that for 45 years.
Yeah. I remember one time, when I was in high school, I had the balls to say to him, and you think that you know everything.
Yeah.
Maybe I was in middle school. I said, well, I'm like, I go, life's too short. You shouldn't work so much. And he just got real quiet. And he's like, he's just kind of like, the overtime pays for your existence. He's like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's like, without the overtime, he's like,
I know that, right? And there's always this struggle, right? Because you always say, look, you're here a very short period of time. It can end at any time.
Right.
But you gotta, and also, 90% of all the time you spend with your kids is done by the time they're 18.
Yeah.
So you're trying to balance it all. But like my son this morning on the way here was sort of giving me big balls about like, he's like, well, Mom's running around. She's got 2 soccer games. I said, Rex, I worked 70 hours this week. I had a very busy week. One of my associates is traveling. I was in court every day. And I said, I have 2 podcasts. And he's like, why are you doing this? I said, Rex, it's important to me. I don't just do it because like I'm going to get 2 massages. I said, I'm learning about people. I'm making content. It's marketing.
Yeah.
I said, that house we have under contract in Unionville, you know how I pay for it? Like, so, but it's not that I'm there, like I'm never home. Like I'm home every night by 7 at the latest.
Right.
We go on lots of vacations. I take most of August off if I can. So, it's different. But like, they don't know like a dad like that that's like, hey, and you can't, it's not like you can text them at lunch and like, hey dad, how are things? Like my son will text me during the, when he gets home from school, pictures, we can be in touch. I'll be home when I'm home.
Yeah, it was.
That's what it used to be like.
That little exchange, it was no longer than maybe it was like 15 seconds.
Right.
And as a 5-year-old man, I remember it like it was yesterday because it was very humbling. Because my father never talked about work. He never would. I've never in my life ever heard my father complain about work.
Wow, he didn't bring it home.
He never, and he was like, you would go, because we only had 1 car, so we'd go pick him up. I'd have to go, my mother's like, go pick up your father. So go pick him up, say at 7 o'clock, and I'd wait in the parking lot, and he'd come out. And the place was like Mad Max. There's like
everyone's like bell rings.
Well, there's like fire shooting out of machines. It's like I'm like,
it's a foundry.
What is that?
It's a foundry.
Yeah. I'm like, what is going on here? And he comes out and he's like covered in soot.
And so our inclination and our personalities would be like, if my son picked me up, like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, Jimmy like got hurt, and you'd share something like that.
Sure.
He was just like,
he would tell us stories about work, but he would never be like, oh man, I hate my job. He was so appreciative
that he had work.
That he would never, and he also has just like the crazy, he's like 80, he's 81 years old right now.
Right.
And I have to like make him like not pick up heavy things at work.
Oh,
he comes, he wants to help, and just like, and he's capable, but I'm like, that's 50 pounds, man. Don't pick that up because if you go down, then it's like, what am I going to do with
Oh my gosh. So he didn't do, wow.
So he just never, and at the time when you're young and you have like these ideals, you think you know everything, but that little
about life is too short. You remember that
little exchange there, like it just kind of like was enough for me to be like, oh, I need to shut up.
Well, but right, because now, right, as somebody who works very hard and as a child, like, there is more to life than work, but also like money. My view on this, and tell me if you're wrong. Like people say, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, to some extent, it does. And hear me out.
It makes it easier.
Well, I've been poor. I grew up with a single mother on welfare. Luckily, I went to private schools because I was smart, and they gave me scholarships. But money buys experiences.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you and you will be happier largely, in my view, if you can, take your your wife and your child on a cool experience somewhere where you're zip lining through the El Yunque in Puerto Rico.
Right.
That's happiness. Now, if you're broke, you can't do that.
Right.
It doesn't, and I'm not saying that it's the be all and end all, but it gives you it also allows you to donate money, right? Which can bring that later.
Sure.
It can't, it allows you to get access to better things like medical things, even
of course.
So yes, but it doesn't just automatically bring happiness. You could be a miserable person. You could.
It's how you use it too, right?
It's how you use it.
Like, because skipping ahead, when I used to work for Saul LeWitt. When I was like
the artist.
Yeah.
The guy who has his stuff up in River Tavern in
and in the Wadsworth
oh my God,
the National Gallery.
Oh my God, I got to learn about this
stuff. So I worked for the LeWitt Collection, and when I saw him, obviously he's very wealthy. He's like one of the most important artists in the last since forever. And so what I noticed from afar, and I never had conversations with him about this, but what I noticed from afar is how he spent his time, because he was in his early 70s at the time when I worked for him, and when I worked for his business, the LeWitt Collection, he spent his time. He took that money. You're talking about buying happiness, but he spent it because he had the resources. He spent his time exactly how he wanted to,
right,
and not filling it with anything that he did not want to do. And it was simple things. So for instance, getting up, going for a walk, going down and having an egg sandwich in the center of Chester. Maybe in the afternoon getting a sandwich and having a beer, but making art from the morning through lunch, having lunch, making art until whatever the early evening, sitting down listening to classical music, spending time with friends and family, and having people set up his studio and take down the studio so that when he came in, he just had to worry about making the art. But it was nothing extravagant.
Right.
Only from I have no idea.
He didn't have a yacht or anything like that.
And I have no idea because I was an employee. I wasn't a personal friend, but looking at that from afar, it's oh no, he's set things up. So it's he's gotten rid of all the noise. And that's what he did with that's how it was his.
No, right, but if you have wife and kids and you're an immigrant here and you have to go work 7 to 7 to just make ends meet, it's different, right? So
it is.
But I do see that it does explore. It does give you that, you can do things on your terms.
Yeah. I mean, again, even just when you're talking about growing up, we didn't have a huge amount growing up, but so the experiences they would have was that we'd all go to Harkness Park, right? And there'd be
that's down in, for people to know, Groton, the London area.
It'd be 20 Greek people, right? And we go down there, and we were just there, last year.
I love that place.
I love it.
Beautiful.
And blankets on the ground, grilling chicken and whatever it is, and we'd be there for 7 hours.
Oh, the sun's beating down. You love it. You feel
you're
just sweaty and covered in sand.
And that's I could all the different stories.
And you could do that every day for the rest of your life.
That was every Saturday. If my father took the day off work, that's what we would do.
And all you have to do is bring your stuff. You pay for the parking, $2 or whatever.
Yeah. So there's, you know what I mean? So it was, his thing was that he was just I came here to work and to raise family and have support and have a foundation where there's security and stuff like that. And that's what he did, but I think, when you're talking about Rex and stuff like that, I think that it's just when we all get a little bit older, I think that, because our kids are always watching, right? Even when
they take everything
in, and it's just the greatest thing that I think my father gave me from just seeing him. He never sat down and lectured me about the importance of work. He never said, "Hey, it's important that you do this or do that."
No, he just
never once.
But it's by example.
Just by example, and so now I see him, and I'm just kind of if I ever come home and I'm work sucks, this, that, and the other thing, it's you get checked. It's just because you're that perspective is just kind of in you now. You know what I mean? You sit back and you're oh no, you need to be thankful.
Was your dad in a thought did he use corporal punishment with you?
No, not really. But Greeks have a way that you don't ever need.
It's different than the Italian.
There's an intensity when you get yelled at by Greek parents.
Really?
That is
that just literally
it's worse
than the belt.
It's worse than ever getting smacked.
You'd rather take the belt. Because it's psychologically demoralizing.
The belt happens and then it's over.
Right. And you could just get through it.
Say if something happened at school, I did something stupid or whatever it is, right? You'd come home and my mother would be home and she would yell at you it was holy cow. And then you're and sustained for hours.
Sustained.
Yeah. And then she'd like reset and start over again.
But what like give me some of the like things that like would they say like things like you're like would it be like we're disappointed or would it be like you stupid fucker?
Oh,
like
dude, the passion in Greek, the
like
Greek
give me an
language,
example like what they say. Give me an example of like a
poetic, you know. So like I mean like I just saw this post on Instagram about like Greek parents and things that they call you in the literal translations of what it is.
Yeah, like,
if you look at it, that's the best thing. It's like the literal translation of something like, you know, you're a
give me the Greek.
Calling you a donkey, like calling you a guy.
Give me the Greek one.
Calling you a guy booty. It's like you're literally calling me a donkey. You know what I mean? Like you're guy booty. You're like a beast. You know what I mean? And it goes on and on from there. And so,
like, there's one in Italian. Like I worked on a construction site, so I had all these Italian American slang. And one of the things is a shadrul, which is shatriolo, which is like a cucumber. Like you're a fucking idiot, right? It's like or a cacazone means somebody who shits their pants. It's just like fuck the hell.
It's so bad. Like there's like. I don't know how to say it in Greek, but there's like things where they're like, I'm going to like bite your face off, or like it's an expression. You're like, okay, if we literally translate that, it's like, what are you gonna bite my face off? They're never gonna bite your face off. But
so that's where it's like you're sitting there like, holy you're 9 years old, and you're like, what?
Remember, my father gets home from work at 7 sometimes.
And did she say, wait till your father gets home?
Well, not even. She would finish. It'd be like the calm, and then all of a sudden, like a new storm front would come in because my father would come home. They'd talk. And then he would start in, and then that just would like, she would start like it never happened before. And so then she would start yelling at you like, oh man, this is a double reset, and here we go.
And so
well into the evening.
So in the Greek culture, that's the discipline that's.
Yeah, well, it's just like, it's very emotional responses. And I think there's a pro and con to that, right?
Okay.
Like, so like that emotional kind of like, so they're yelling at you passionately, because it's like they care so much. Like you are never.
They love you, right?
Yeah, you're never worried about whether or not they care because it's just kind of everywhere. It's like spilling out everywhere. It's spilling out when they're mad. It's spilling out when they're happy. It's spilling out everything. So it's a very emotional household. There was not like, it wasn't very closed off. It wasn't that people sat there and talked and like held you and said, I love you so much. It just was like, again, it was like through like just how they handled you and how they talked to you. So like the words, what they were saying weren't as important as like what they were doing. So it was never like, you know, and so that it was a very kind of emotional. And so like, even like now as like someone who manages a business, like I'm much better now than what I was, but like I would respond to things very emotionally, take things very personally, and like get very, very, very like angry before I'd get perspective. And like when I was my early days of managing in the restaurant business, and like in a bad way, I was like known for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As a temper, a yeller?
It wasn't necessarily well, maybe it was a temper. It was like just like when when I was working at the half door, right? If somebody wasn't doing their job, they weren't doing what they're supposed to, or something bad was happening, it's like jump down their throat first before being like, hey, listen, come here for a second.
Yeah, what's going on?
Let me tell you why this is important. Okay, you need to do this because of X, Y, and Z.
Which is a better way.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
So like, you know, that was like the evolution kind of happened from there.
But so there was no corporal punishment.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump back. So you then graduate high school, and you go into the printing business?
Well, no. So I was going into fine arts. So I was
fine arts.
Yeah, so fine arts. So I wasn't sure because it was very intimidating. Like parents didn't know anything about it. So like I was like on my own. So while I was figuring out, I went to Manchester Community College, and then just I was all set to go to mass art. Like one of my instructors was like, we're going to go to mass art, do all this other stuff. And I just was like, all my friends go to Central. So I just went to Central.
Okay.
Yeah. And I met some some real amazing artists there that are still part of my life today. And they're really important people to me. And they're like, one of them is I very much consider like a mentor. But like, and I mean, a lot of the people that I went to school with are like working artists today, and a lot of Central.
Do you make art still?
I don't.
Did you make art?
I used to.
What kind? What was your medium?
So I was, drawing, painting, and then printmaking.
Okay.
Printmaking more so when I was a student. Though.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's how I got the job working with the Lewitt collection.
And is that your first sort of big job?
Yeah, that was a big deal. That job was handed down. It was kind of like you inherited that job. So, but then all that came to not so much a screeching halt, but it kind of faded away the second I got a job in a restaurant.
And so you went from the art and you went right to the half door?
Yeah, so my old roommate, was roommates with Phil Barnett,
Okay.
who owns the Wooden Tap.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so
One of the partners, right? There's a few.
one of
right?
the partners. I think
Yeah.
there's just two of them now.
Oh, two. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just two
Okay.
now. So one day, I had two other jobs at the time. Remind you, everybody.
Surprise, surprise.
I walked in because what was really cool is at Central with we would go, after we'd have our critiques in class, we would go and meet up at the half door. And we'd talk about art and all sorts of stuff. And we'd sit in this one table and there'd be like 10 of us. And we'd just continue the critique and just start talking about stuff, drink Guinness and have a great time. And it was like, it reminds you of like the salon days back and thinking of like talking about art. And it was wonderful. It was like a great time. And so I knew the owner, who was Phil. He was one of the original partners of the half door. And I just asked him, I was like, hey, if you ever need any help, let me know. The next day he called me up. I became a bar back. And I was the oldest bar back they ever hired. I was 27.
Wow.
I was 26.
That's usually a young man's job, right?
And I was 26, maybe 20, going on 27, and people looked at me like I was 50. And so I moved up very quickly because I just was like, when you're 26, you kind of figure some things out. I was like, show up to work on time and just do what you're supposed to do while you're there.
So they could use you for other things. You probably said, hey, this guy called out.
That's it. But just those two things,
right.
Showing up on time and doing what I'm supposed to do, made me look like a rock star. I was no better than anyone else. I just showed up on time and did what I was supposed to do. And so very quickly after that, I started bartending during the day, and they trained me how to bartend. And then after that, I started bartending at nights. And then after that, it just kind of went from there. And I was there for about a year before I started managing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and then you worked there, you said 9 years?
I worked there for just about 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the early days of bartending there were wonderful because there's like, so, I mean, this because you've gone to like London and Ireland and stuff. Like what kind of sunk my hooks in, the hooks that got sunk in me was like the pub culture.
Oh, I really love that.
Yeah. And so for me, that camaraderie,
and
it's something I never expected, because I knew like the cafes in Greece and I kind of like, was very kind of like, nostalgic about it and stuff. But I never spent an enormous amount of time doing that stuff. But when I went to the half door, at the time, you have to think about what the landscape was in Hartford. The half door was like considered like the only kind of authentic Irish pub besides like Anna Liffey's in New Haven.
This is late 90s.
This is 2000.
Oh yeah, right, like 99, 2000.
They had been open for like 2 years.
I remember this because I moved back here from Washington in 97 for law school, graduated in 2000, so we'd go to the half door all the time.
Yeah, I was the guy behind the bar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So when that pub culture got to me, and it just kind of went in my blood, and I just like couldn't get enough of it. And then I didn't even realize that at the time, but like looking back, it's like that's what it was. It wasn't like the money was great. It was fun. We were all drinking a lot of Irish whiskey back then, having a good time. But it was all the other stuff. Like, I feel it ate up a decade of my life because that's all I did. But, working at the half door bought me my first house. I was able to buy my wife an engagement ring. Like, all that stuff.
And so when does Julia come into the picture?
She came in, when I was 29, 2004 is when we met.
At the half door?
At the half door, yeah.
And what was she doing?
She was working for, do you remember this
for Max's,
restaurant?
Right?
She had worked for them in the past,
right.
But then she was working at Azul.
Oh, which is Max Burger.
Yeah.
I loved Azul.
That was a great restaurant.
Azul was fantastic. It means blue in Spanish.
Mike Kelly.
Yes. And I remember
Mike Kelly.
They fixed it now, but it used to be a bank, and the ceilings were very low in there. I loved Azul.
It was a great restaurant.
Great.
It was just about... It was probably like 7 years too early, 10 years too early. That's all.
Right now it would be like packed every night.
They would literally behind the bar, they would press sugarcane for their caipirinhas and their mojitos.
That was a good place.
It was a fantastic
I loved
place.
it.
So think about that. That's like mixology and stuff before people were calling it.
Yeah, like they have what do they call that? We have our mixology program. They call it a program.
Yeah. They were just doing it, and like she worked there. She bartended there. She was a server there.
And where's she from?
So she grew up back and forth between New Hampshire and Vermont.
Okay.
She has lived in Connecticut longer than she's lived anywhere else, but she grew up in Connecticut.
And how did she get to Connecticut? What brought her here?
So she was born in Philly. They moved to New Hampshire and then into Vermont. And then I think like a past relationship brought her to Connecticut.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And then she was
She just wandered into the half door.
Oh, I don't know. Do you know Ayrton?
Ayrton, no.
Well, he actually used to live right behind here.
Okay.
But a mutual friend introduced us.
Like just today is my friend.
Well, I was leaving, and he was like, he's a great guy, and he was like, no, you have to wait. I have friends coming, and he knew
you were leaving. You were leaving for the day.
Yeah, he was like you. He knew everybody, and he was like, oh no, I have friends coming over. They all and half the staff from Missoula came in, and they were all sitting there having drinks. So we just had them having.
Oh, it was
drinks
like industry night or something.
Yeah, and we just started talking after that, and then that was it.
And you started dating.
Yeah. From that moment on, we've been together.
So how long have you been married?
Jeez, we got.
I'm not going to ask you for dates.
No. We got married in 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just trying to do the math.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we got married in 2009.
Years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from. All right. So how do you then transition from? Where do you go when you're done with the half door?
So all right. So finishing up at the half door. Like I said, that camaraderie was like that's like what really kept me for 10 years. And then from the half door, I went to Firebox. I became the general manager of Firebox.
Oh yeah, that's where
Fire by Forge.
Fire by Forge. Yeah. Ben Dubois.
Yeah. So I was there for 5 years as a general manager, and what actually made me leave there was that I signed a lease for what is now Little River.
Oh, with Chris.
With Chris. So Chris and I.
Is that closed, by the way?
I don't know.
I don't know what's going on there.
Chris and I, and he brought in another partner that he knew, but we signed that lease. I was one of the original business partners there.
For Little River.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then.
That was a great place.
It's a great place. But then at the same time, I was walking my son. I had him in a stroller. I was walking around town because we had just moved to Old Wethersfield.
Okay.
And I walked into Comstock Ferre and I said, hey, would you guys ever rent a corner of this place out for us to open a general store?
Because it was just seed. There was no food there.
It was a retail store and seeds, and the front room was empty. And I said, would you rent this room out to us? And we want to open up like an authentic Vermont country general store. And I thought Julia and we talked about it, and I was like, it'd be us two and maybe two other people, right? And we don't need for it to be crazy successful. We just want to be able to pay our bills and just not have to work till 4 or 5 in the morning anymore and just do this, right? And so Baker Creek Seed Company owned it, and they were out of Mansfield, Missouri.
I remember you told me this.
Yeah, and he goes, we'll rent it to you. He's like, but you have to take the entire property.
Aren't they part of a religious sect?
They're Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh, Seventh-day Adventists. Yeah. I know it was I just didn't remember. It was something that's unique.
But they're like, I can't even begin to tell you how much we owe them.
No. Yeah, I know they're great. Yeah. I just remember you told me that, and I remember it stuck out because you don't find. I don't know any Seventh-day.
Well, no, neither do I. But like it's funny though.
Are they Christians?
I think so. Yeah,
I think so. Right? It's like the Mormons. It's just a sect of Christianity.
They worship on Saturdays.
That's right. Okay. All right. I remember. Yeah. I just don't know enough about them. So when you walk in there, there's a manager or somebody you talk to, and they say, "Hey, you got to call this guy back in Missouri."
Well, here's the thing, right? And it goes to like all these connections, right? I got the job at Firebox because people knew me from the half door. I had a recognizable name because everyone used to drink at the half door.
Right, Spiro. Right.
Yeah, and so then when I went to this place, it just so happened that the girl that was working there, her name was Irina, and she used to eat at Firebox, and I never met her before. She was like, "Oh, you work at Firebox," and she loved that restaurant because we were really back then. You got to think it's like, what was it, 2010 to 2015. It was like the first kind of real kind of farm-to-table restaurant in the area. And we were like really, almost to a fault. Like it was like, it was really difficult.
You're doing charcuterie plates.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sean Farrell was our chef, and then Ed Jones was our chef.
Yeah, Ed Jones.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so then we did that, and she put me in contact with them, and he's like, you have to take the whole space.
We're done with it.
And I was like, oh, we can't do that. Like it's crazy. And then Julie and I started talking, and then they were so willing to help us. He's like, okay, well, you can pay rent by selling the seeds.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's a great deal.
And so the first 3 years.
Because they can't, let's just put this in perspective for people.
Yeah.
This seed place is 18 something. When was it built?
The business is 18 something. The building is older than that.
Right. It's an 1800s mill, right? Yeah. You guys have the old original mill equipment.
Yeah.
There?
So there was, I guess how it goes is that like they would like have like make seed sets there. So if you say the Wethersfield red onion, right? We still have all the onion drying racks. So they would put the red onions out there and they would dry. And then down at the end where the cove is, they had like shipbuilding, like buildings there and stuff like that. But they would go and ship them down there, and they would take the seed sets and travel up and down the Connecticut River
and sell them.
And sell them, and just farmers would take them up and down for like it's like the development of the colonies.
So they still. So if I remember going there years ago before you guys were there, but you go there and you could buy packets of seeds for anything you want.
Anything, yeah. They used to sell it by weight.
Right.
You take a scoop of this and do it that way.
Sunflower, whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
So the guy said, "Look, we're going to get out of that business. You sell the seeds and just turn that over to us."
Yeah. Well, they were losing like $10,000 a month.
Right.
And so he's like, well, listen. He's like, you guys take it, and we'll help you, and we're gonna open our business. And he's like, okay, well, tell me your business plan. And we were working with Score.
Oh yeah, Score's good.
Yeah, it's good. If it wasn't for them either, we wouldn't.
No,
be
that's
screwed.
so people should know. Score is a volunteer organization where successful
SBA.
business women and men that have maybe built a business, done really well, they mentor you for free.
Yeah, and it was incredible. Incredible. And it's just, if for nothing else, just to help you to get your business plan together.
Right.
You know? And it was great, you know? And so let's see. So then, you know, he's like, well, tell me your business plan, how much, and I think Jared's a few years younger than me. And he's like, and they have a very successful seed business. They're a huge seed business. And I told him, I was like, yeah, you know, we have like $40,000 from this. And he's like, you don't have enough money. And like, so like the next day, like sent us a check in the mail, and he's like, wow, no interest for 3 years to pay us back, which we did.
Wow.
And like, if it wasn't for that cash,
you couldn't do it.
We couldn't do it. Like, and
do you still keep in touch with them?
Yeah. We still sell seeds. We still, you know, we have a consignment agreement with them, you know? But like, if it wasn't for those things, like even with that generosity, our first like 2 years, our first 2 years, we should have closed 1,000 times. 1,000 times we should have closed, you know? And
so let's talk about how this came to be. So after Firebox, you talk to the seed, you say you want to rent this out. And Julia, you have probably been Julia's been in the food business as well, right? She was a pastry chef at Max's. She's been in the food business
longer than me.
Right, she was a pastry chef at Max's.
She started off pastry chef, I think, like at the Oyster, I believe.
Oh, at Oyster, that's right.
And then she worked at Max downtown as server, bartender.
And Steve, by the way, I told you I was working out with him this morning, and he literally couldn't say enough good things about not only you, but also Julia. She said, he gave me an example. He says, there used to be a sort of a homeless guy across the street, and like the guy would come up to her and she would like give him change and give him water. And like, she's a real, like, he was like, she's like an angel.
She's amazing. Like the two people that like kind of really kind of, I guess, introduced me to the hospitality world, to food and everything else, is Julia and my old boss from the Half Door. But Julia especially, I mean, just like the first time we went out to like an amazing dinner, believe it was like back like in like 2004, we went to Babbo.
Where was that?
Remember Mario Batali's place in New York?
Oh, yeah.
His flagship place before he disintegrated. But like, it was amazing. And it was like this like ballet. And I was just blown away by it. It was just amazing. And even just like, I've never like experienced service like that. And it just was like, just the first time you had, it's like this appreciation for like, okay, you can do anything at a level that is crazy, right? You know, anything,
right?
You know, and so just seeing that, it really kind of got me going.
So, but you guys were talking. Obviously, you're together, and you're like, we want to open this thing, and you're living in Old Weathersfield, which the neighborhood that this is in is historic, all historic homes, little shops, great restaurant, and it's really growing. Like, I want to have on here Laura Lenoci. So there's a place there, folks. You should also visit besides
the
this
gelato
place.
Yeah.
She has an authentic. It's not just like American.
No.
She's flown in all the equipment from Italy, and they make authentic Italian gelato that'll change your life.
They're opening up a second location.
I saw that. Yeah. And it's right. I mean, you get that Biscoff gelato.
That's awesome.
It's just like last meal stuff.
Yeah. No, they're doing a great job. You know.
And she has a spa.
She has a spa.
And you guys have the Charles. I mean, it's a great neighborhood.
It's a great neighborhood. Then you also have the the creamery is there as well.
The creamery is there, good ice cream.
Is there as well, and the Charles is there.
The Charles is delicious.
And it's like all these places popping up.
Little pizza. So you guys do that, and so the guy sends you a check, and you're like, I'm on my way. We're gonna do it.
Well, yeah. So like, it's just like that. Like it just was. It wasn't because we paid him back. You know what I mean? But it just was like, we were naive enough to think that we can just do it. And thank goodness that we had a little bit of support from these people that did not have to support us to like kind of like fan that flame a little bit.
And the seed company owned the building.
Yeah, we leased from them for the first 5 years, and then we purchased the building.
Right. Yeah, so now it's all yours.
Yeah, we purchased the building, and so now it's like, locally owned, and the building is kind of like this, second child of ours.
Right. And so when do you start? When do you open it up as your? When do you open the first?
So we first opened. It was 2016.
16.
Yeah, so it was like January of 2016, and we've been going ever since. And getting busier every year. Even in our 9th year, we're busier than we were last year, which we were busier before then. So business is just it's just going up and up, and it's wonderful. And it's. Do
you guys do any social media?
Yeah, we do Instagram, and we do Instagram, Facebook, and stuff like that. But
not like a sustained campaign. You post when you can, right? Yours is like a word of mouth kind of place.
We're posting. I think that we just hit 20,000 followers.
Oh wow! Okay, all right.
Yeah, and so which is just pretty. It's okay. It's okay. You know what I mean? But we do post like maybe not daily, but like several times a week. Yeah. So but we do it ourselves. Like we don't have a social media person.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think maybe we should, but it's something. Like it's been a wild ride, and so I just think about like where we were 9 years ago, and I was just talking to let's say Kevin from Small State.
Oh, another great dude.
Yeah,
I had him on here too.
He's awesome. He's inspiring, dude.
Oh yeah, and he loves Julia's product, and I know I'm sure you love his product. His product's great too.
Yeah, we that's our bread. Yeah.
Oh, you use his bread.
We use his bread, yeah.
And he's committed to like heirloom products. The other place I want to have her on is there's a place in West Hartford Center, right in LaSalle Road here, called More Pasta Lab. Do you know about them?
No.
Italian family, and by Italian I mean like Italian, like off the boat Italian. Her and her husband, I think it's her and her husband. They import all their flour from Italy, and they sell fresh pasta. That's all they sell.
Oh, nice.
And it's like
just like hyper focused.
And
on
so
that.
it's not, so a lot of people that are gluten sensitive, they don't have any trouble even eating the gluten flour because it's not enriched with the folic acid and all that stuff. Sure. So you go there, and I get like, I cook on Sundays. I'm getting better, but I get like homemade tagliatelle or rigatoni, and it's and it cooks in like a couple minutes because it's fresh. You should try it out. It's another somebody else doing quality products locally and doing that. So. Wow. So let's see. So you go, and at some point you have a child, right?
Yeah. So Costa was born in 2012.
2012, right? Yeah. So he's a little older than my son.
Yeah.
Right. And that's your only child.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And does he help in the business?
He's starting to.
Okay.
He's starting.
That's almost like a rite of passage for a Greek kid, right?
It's a tricky thing though, right? Because like that business is what he kind of sees takes 100% of his parents' time. So it's like. You hope that, he gets to the point where he starts to fall in love with it as opposed to being like this. It's
taking my parents away. But I mean, that could be, my son always asks me, I want to come in and help. And I'm like, I deal with divorce stuff, so it's very sensitive and it's hard to bring him in. But like, I could see how a business like yours could really like help a kid like learn so much.
I think that we've talked about it because he's like old enough that where he can come and help.
Yeah, he can help he get coffees for people and move stuff.
I think that like when he starts to see like, he does, don't get me wrong, he does come help. Like he's like, this is the year that he's helped the most. Like he'll come and help us with any like outside work, but then he'll also come, there's times when we get huge orders in, he'll come and like scan the orders and put them into like display them, put them on the shelves and stuff like that and like receive stuff and do that stuff. Slowly, we're not doing it so it's like, hey,
you got 2 hours every day,
but like, I think that he's anxious because I think that he wants to like work and like, make a little bit of money so that he can go,
but
do what he wants to do.
I think it's a great lesson too when you have to interface with the public because it gives you great skills.
Yeah. It's like, I was a complete introvert and a shy dude until I started bartending.
Right.
Like once I started bartending, it's like you have that bar between you and the people. You can talk to anybody with a bar between you.
Oh, that's interesting metaphor. Yeah,
it's like really different. Like when you're just like sitting together at like side by side.
It's really that stuff. I just came back from a conference in Utah, Salt Lake City, obviously a big Mormon population, and I learned that in Provo, Utah, where BYU is or near BYU, there's all these businesses that have sales forces, around the country. They set up their headquarters there, or like their sales headquarters, because you have 100,000 Mormon men that have come back from a 2-year mission where they're knocking on doors. In Romania, Jamaica, people are slamming doors. They're afraid of nobody.
Yeah.
So you say, hey, we need a sales force in Columbus, Ohio. You ship 5 of these guys there and you give them a map. They'll go anywhere.
They'll just go anywhere.
And they come back and they make, the guy was saying, the guy who runs the software company is a Mormon guy. And he's like, he was talking about how software sort of helped them grow their business. And he's like, the reason why he got recruited is he see all his Mormon friends come back with a BMW in the summer. And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, guy's like, I made $100,000 this summer. He's like, you made $100,000 this summer. He goes, yeah, I sold. He's like, because, when I was a kid, I used to sell the candy bars door to door for fundraising, whatever. But most kids, you say to your kid or my kid, hey, go door to door and sell. They'd be like, you're fucking crazy. Yeah. These kids go anywhere. So it's great. So a lot of companies set up there and then they ship them out for the summer. Yeah. It's genius, right? But now, conversely, it's also the scam capital of the United States.
Oh, is it really?
Because they get some people and they get them to sell horseshit stuff to them and whatever. So it goes back and forth. But it's sort of that. But yeah, I could see how he could get experience dealing with the public, and you get by the time he's 18 years old, he knows how to deal with customers that are difficult and like I don't know. One of the things Steve told me in his podcast was the customer isn't always right, but they're allowed to be wrong.
That's very true. Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great way to put it. Because his point is, if you screw something up, even if it's perceived by the customer as screwed up, fix it, because one customer now can really lose you a lot of business. One. So just be like, you know what? Eat it. You think a cake is screwed up and it's not, make them another one. That's what we talk about. I'm like, don't turn into Sherlock Holmes and try to figure it out. I'm like, what's the solution? They need a difference. They need another sandwich. Don't ask them what happened to this. Oh, let me get you another one.
Right, because here's how it works.
It's a waste of time otherwise.
If I say to you, hey, Rich, you anywhere good lately? Oh, Sarah and I may go to XYZ tonight. And you say to me, Julie and I went there, wasn't so great, right? Because maybe they didn't fix it. Right. Now I'm going to go home and Sarah's like, where do you want to go tonight? I'm like, yeah, well, Spiro said that place wasn't so great. Now, we could have had a $150 dinner that they just lost out on.
Sure.
And then 5 more times if it was good. Yeah. Just because you weren't, and maybe you're picky and and they didn't make it right for you, even though you were wrong. Right. And now they've lost me, they've lost them. And then somebody asked me, and then it...
Let alone if they decide to go online and
those people are
crazy,
right, and they don't even give you a chance.
They don't give you a chance, right? And it's like it's I don't know. We can talk for hours about that, but
So all right, so lessons. So when you were obviously starting a restaurant, I call it an experience. Your place, it's because it's more than just a food. It's a whole vibe, and I mean that in the most positive way possible. As you know, I've been coming since you opened.
Well, when we were first signing the lease, when I decided that, okay, I can't do the cocktail bar with Chris, I have to just choose one.
Right.
So we chose to do Comstock Ferre. And I described the business to him. And the best way to put it, just to go what you're saying, he looked at me and he goes, a lot of moving parts. I'm like, yeah, exactly.
No, but it is, right? Yeah. You go there's like people doing yoga upstairs.
Well, they're from time to time.
You got Christmas trees you're selling.
Yeah. What it is this, right? When we first took over the space, there was nobody in there. It was like vacant. And I said, whatever we do, it needs to be full of people. Just whatever we're doing. Like, we don't, like, selling Christmas trees is a break-even business.
Right.
Like, we're not trying to be a Christmas tree
seller. No, I know, but it's
like,
great.
But it's like, there's people here, and we're building memories. Because when we open up the doors, people come in, they're like, I used to come here when I was a kid with my dad. He taught me how to roller skate in the barn. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
No, right. Well, like, for instance, I get, we have a fake tree that we've had for years, but we always get our turkey from you, right? So everybody knows that. Where do you get your turkey? We go to Comstock Ferre. Now, so you make a few bucks on that. But you're right. It's about bringing the people in to say, this is the place where we go to for this, and we go to for here. And, we had, I think my son's first birthday there? Yeah. Or second birthday,
yeah. The
Elmo cake.
The Elmo cake.
The Elmo cake. Yeah, so it's like, so anyhow, my point was restaurants, as you know from being in the business, they're the one of the toughest businesses to open, right? It's very difficult. Most of them fail within a year. So if you're going to put your money in it, you're like most people will say to you, you're fucking crazy.
Being naive was almost like a gift.
Right. It's what is ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. So we didn't know enough to talk ourselves out of it. And no one tried to talk us out of it. Like, we thought, like, from years of working for other people, and like I was lucky enough that when I worked at the Half Door, those guys were like, call me if it's on fire. Other than that, leave me alone. But and I don't say that like they didn't care. They just like really trusted me. And I didn't realize that until I was much older. I was like, oh, that was actually a gift they gave me. It wasn't like, they weren't like fair weather kind of owners that just were never around. They were always around, but they were like, he would say something to me that I'd say, hey, Sean, listen, the toilet's broken like this. And he'd say something like, what would you do if you were at home? Well, then do that. And then you'd go and you'd fix it, right? You just go to Home Depot, buy a new toilet, fix the toilet.
So, right. So ignorance is bliss, right?
So and then also like those tools that I got, like like those guys like let me run that restaurant like it was mine, and I didn't even know it at the time, but that's what I was doing for all those years.
But at this point when you're opening this up, you're a guy that was making good money. You could have gone to run a restaurant, and make a 6-figure income
by now, yeah, probably.
yeah. No, but I'm saying, but you could have done that, and instead you're opting for this dream of yours that has a very small percentage chance of surviving.
Well, our intention was, we were kind of safe about it though, because we had no intention of it being like a financially kind of like successful place.
No, but you got to pay your bills.
We're going to pay our bills, but that's all we wanted.
Oh, right.
So our expectations were low.
But
right?
but still, but remember, you could pay your bills, go and work somewhere else where you don't have any of the headaches.
Of course, you don't have the headache, and
you don't have to managing people. People are quitting; they're not showing up.
I just think that it was one of those things where we were just kind of like, if they can do it, we can do it, and we want to do it. And there's this place right here that's just sitting there, and we have this idea. And then also, like when we were living in Old Wethersfield, and at the time we were like, wouldn't it be great to walk somewhere and
you still live in Old Wethersfield?
Yeah, I live like 6 houses down.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I live right around the corner from.
Oh, so you could walk right there.
Yeah, it's like maybe a 3-minute walk.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like 6 houses.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but like that was a big thing too. We would say to ourselves, wouldn't it be great to go get like some really good coffee and not have to get in the car and drive somewhere and get it, or like get something like good, like kind of like food that is like, like
healthy,
and
prepared locally.
Our food, our focus is on it being delicious first, and then
but
not being full of like crap.
No, you use all natural ingredients.
All natural ingredients, organics whenever we can, local as much as possible. We work with like 3 different dairy farms, 2 different like apiaries. We work with like probably 20 different farms. Yeah,
good shit.
But like to answer your question, is that like we just thought that like we're working for all these other people for like 40 years between us or whatever it is, 20 years between us. Like we can do it.
We can do it.
We do it every day.
So, but to your point though, like with you talked about the relationship with the seed guy that you forged.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the theme of this, the podcast. Like that relationship built this for you. Like in other words, it gave you obviously you had to put the hard work in, but without that, you would be somewhere else.
Without that, like we would have never gotten started because we would have been just like undercapitalized. Like we wouldn't have had,
and that's tough.
And that's tough, right? Because there's a lot of restaurants that they come out of the gate and they're really successful and they're like, we don't have any money left to pay for the second round.
Right. Before I did family law exclusively, I would, talk to a lot of restaurants and advise them and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they start getting, this is when it gets bad, right? They start doing those credit card loans where they start take a percentage of the credit card, the factoring, right? And then they come to me and I'm like, because they always come to me when there's a problem, they say, Rich, we need to talk to you. Because they know that I'm non-judgmental, I solve problems, right? So they call me. And I've gotten probably 6 of these calls in my life from restaurants. So I know all this because I was doing that work. And they come to me and I'm like, okay, let's talk. And I'm like, what do you got? And they tell me, I'm like, oh God, here we go. And then of course they're going to Restaurant Depot to buy stuff because they're cut off from their credit. And then because they don't have the capital. And like, well, what are your numbers? I'm like, your numbers are good. Like, and so undercapitalized will kill you.
It'll kill you. Like, and also like, yeah, I mean, there's times when, you can be the most successful place to go out of business.
Well, and the line I always tell my kids and other people is success will kill you faster than failure.
Yeah. Yeah. So with us, like now running the business is that like, you have to kind of manage the money very carefully. You have to just like, because we have like this thing that's very expensive. Like the property is very expensive to maintain, to like heat, to cool, to all that stuff.
Right. Huge ceilings, no insulation.
We have a different thing. So like we have a very different existence than most restaurants. Most restaurants are like, this is our rent, this is our lease, whatever it is. So we're like our business funds our life and funds the property. That's really what it's about, and it does so, and we're very thankful, and it's great. But great. Like, it is what it is.
But how close were you in those first 2 years? Like days away?
We should have. When I say we should have closed, okay, so like not paying the sales tax.
Oh, bro, you got that guard down.
And paying the fine because you're like, well, I need to pay the staff.
And that's when because that's the next thing that comes, by the way, after the credit card. They call me and they're like, I got this letter from the state and I could be arrested for this because it's someone else's money. And believe me, I had to go one time. I'll admit this to you. So there was a restaurant, it's not here anymore, but they got into trouble with the state. And I went to I said I wanted to meet with the lady at I knew people I got a name of the lady who was handling it. I went there and in her little cubby, the state thing, she had I'm not a religious guy at all. I'm sort of I'm a secular humanist. but she had she was very religious.
Yeah.
So I used that to like get them to me. I said, listen, I prayed last night that I'd find somebody like you. I was giving her all the shit because I didn't want my friends to go to jail. And I'm like, and I prayed and I said, Lord, please deliver me somebody that's going to understand that this family's in need and they're going to make this right. And she started like praying with me. And I'm like, my friends came out of it. What happened? I'm like, they were going to take them to jail. And I'm like, I got them out of it. But I did it. It was advocacy because I needed to get them out of it. But when you start touching the sales tags.
Well, here's the thing that this is how naive I was. And I was handling all the money is that I had no idea.
Oh, it's someone else's money.
I was working with an accountant.
Stealing, yeah.
I was working with an accountant who assumed, I was like, no, man. I'm like, I don't even know how we're collecting sales tax. I don't know how we pay it. Who do I pay? What it is. So it was like a couple months. And then obviously
you got on the plane.
Obviously now we've never been, we pay it. Like it's automatic now.
It's automatic. Just take it away. Well, I tell restaurants, I said, have that taken away from you day one. So you don't even touch it. It goes, bye.
Yeah.
Because you see it there. You're like, how am I going to make payroll?
Well, but also gives you a false sense of security. Like when people are like, especially if your restaurant's doing well, you have to say you might have an extra $20,000, $30,000 in the bank.
You're like, oh, look at me.
You're like, oh, look at me. You're like, no, you got to cut that check this month. And that's all going to go.
Right, but if it's short, so should have been. So what is some advice that you've learned or a lesson that you learned, like when you're up, you're up against the wall, facing something that's bad? How do you persevere through that?
Well, I think that we had a couple times where you had to really be like, okay, is it smarter to stop? Or is it better for us to grind and keep going?
Okay.
And a couple things happened. Like I injured myself at my last job, and I had a torn bicep tendon.
Oh, that's the worst.
And so I went in and talked to this is your lawyer, you know this. I'd go in there, I talked to, I was in Middletown, and there was I guess it was maybe maybe he was a judge, I'm not sure. And I asked, do I need a lawyer? And he's like, no, you're just going to talk to me, whatever. So, but the lawyer from the insurance company was there. And I said,
this is a comp.
Yeah. So here's a lawyer. And I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just thinking it's something informal. And then we start talking. And then the insurance company guy whips out a laptop with video surveillance of me. Because I picked up a case of blueberries. I pulled a cart with a case of blueberries with my injured arm.
Oh, you're fucked.
And he's like, dude, I said, listen. I said, that case of blueberries weighs like 3 pounds. It doesn't matter. So anyway, long story short is that like the very small check we got, because I could have hired a lawyer and probably gotten a lot more. The decision we had to make is like, we need to get this check right away because we need to pay our mortgage. So it was like decisions like that.
Right. You take
it. But so going back to your question. So the advice I give is that like, being like really honest with yourself and being like, all right, sometimes it's better to stop. Okay. We didn't know any better. We kept going. But there was times when it was like week after week, you're like, red, we're in the red, we're in the red, we're in the red, we're in the red. And everyone's telling you how great the place is and how amazing it is. And oh my God. And like, look at all the people in here and all this other stuff. And you're like, we're barely paying the staff, and you're like maxing out every credit card you ever had in your life to do it. It's scary because we got to a point where it turned a little bit for us and we started to make headway. The thing that we did it was okay for us. I think it's different for other people now because people are opening restaurants with multi-million-dollar build-outs, right? We did it with like the change from the couch. And it's
and you did a lot of the work yourself.
We did some of it ourselves, but we had a lot of favors from friends and people that we knew from the half door and all this other stuff. But just our business grew organically and it grew very gradually to the point now where like our 9th year in business is our busiest year.
Wow.
We have not plateaued. So, but it's been very gradual. It's been very, very gradual. And we never got to the point where we were just kind of like, we did it, we made it, you know what I mean? So every year it's just a little bit better, a little bit better. So we were very, very, very like self-disciplined when it came to like not like over investing in the business right away.
Right. So if you were to, let's sort of wind this down with what's in store for the anything new that's coming? What kind of stuff?
Well, our business is a little bit different. Like we're never going to open up a second location, right? Our business is synonymous with the property,
that's
right?
It.
So, but we have a lot of property. So, we have the barns back there that we're hoping to renovate and turn into something.
Wedding venue?
Maybe a venue, maybe it's a bakery, we're not sure yet, but we've also are working with Fox Farm Brewery.
Okay.
And they're going to be opening up an outdoor beer garden in the back of the property. Hopefully, I think within the next month.
But you're doing the food.
We do the food, and then so it'll be basically like an extension of their brewery, but on our property outdoors. It's gonna be like an authentic, like European beer garden.
See, I love the fact that I could just, and that will really change it. I want to be able to go there for the day and just hang out. Like I can come in for the food.
Yeah, yeah.
I can play cornhole. I can get on my laptop. I can go have a beer. I can have a
walk
dinner.
around,
I can walk around town.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. It's like an experience-driven thing where you have multiple layers.
It really is.
So, wow, when's that coming?
Should be coming this summer.
Really?
Yeah. So they're just waiting for
liquor permit.
They're just waiting for permit. That's all. Yeah, and so as soon as that comes through, then we'll get started. It's already been approved by the town. We're just ready to go.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So just and a couple more things. The importance of relationships in how your life, the trajectory of this and your business. Would you say that it's critical? How would you describe the relationships with you forged with people to make sure this happens?
It's I think it might be the most important thing. We wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for like key relationships, and just I would not be in the restaurant business if it wasn't for some key relationships. With my previous employers, their passion for what they were doing was infectious. That it kind of got to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So. I think that even like back then, I think it's so different now because back then it was very much like, people were working more in silos. Like if you work at the half door, you only look at the half door. Don't talk to the guys over there. But now I love what's going on. It's been like this for some time, but it's a much more collaborative kind of, restaurant scene in especially like this part of Connecticut.
Help each other out.
Yeah. And everyone helps each other out. I'm calling people all the time being like, hey, asking for advice even after all this time. I think it's not just beneficial, but I think it's necessary. Like those relationships are just like, and also just for simple things like, hey, can I sit here and can we vent to each other for a little bit?
No, that's great.
And
so the sporting guy I told you I met with Steve Abrams comes and works out right after I did, and I said something to him.
He's an amazing guy.
He's amazing, and I said that to him. And I said I have he goes, who do you got today? And I said, oh, I have Spiro. He goes, and we had a moment about you, and I said I love Spiro. He's such a he's again it has to do with relationships. And he said something to me that resonated, and I wanted to tell it to you because I think Steve is the king of hospitality, right? The
Absolutely,
king,
yeah.
And he's such a decent, fundamentally good person as you are. And he said something to me, and I wanted to pay you the same compliment that he gave you, but I want to tell it to you and I didn't tell you beforehand because I think it's an important thing. He said, if you look up, I don't know, this is not a Greek word, but it's a Yiddish word called mensch. You know that word? It's a gentleman. It's the ultimate compliment. And he said, if you look up the word mensch in the dictionary, it has Spiro in there.
That's right.
And I agree with that.
Well,
you were absolutely mensch, a gentleman, and that's why you were able to pull through that because you care for your people and you care about your product and you deserve all the success. So.
Well, we appreciate that so much. That means a lot.
Thank you so much.
You and coming from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is great. I love learning about you and getting some advice.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful.